Hey guys, in this video I would like to have a look with you at two very interesting games played at the Pogchamps, and that's a very cool event. It's the, well, how can we call it, like the World's Amateur Chess Championships among content creators, something like that. And okay, these guys, they are not Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura, but they are good players. And okay, they make a lot of mistakes, but that's actually going to be very interesting, as I would like to discuss with you some very important theme, which is shown in both games. And we are going through the entire game, so apart from the specific theme we are going to discuss, I will give you also a lot of other interesting advices and tips how to become a better chess player. So if you're interested, watch this video and of course subscribe to the channel. I will really appreciate your support. Let's have a look. The first game we are going to have a look at is the game between C-Dog and Sikinu, if I pronounce it correctly, both names, but let's not focus on their names. Let's focus on the game. It's E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight F6. It's a Petrov defense. And now, okay, both pawns are hanging, but okay, rather than protecting the pawn or capturing the pawn, White played here move Bishop C4. It's not a main move, but definitely playable. If you're going to take now the pawn, then probably idea is to go Knight C3, and you have the Stafford Gambit with reversed colors. Definitely something we'll discuss at some point as well. But after the move Bishop C5, White can still take the pawn on E5 now, with a huge threat against the pawn on F7. So this is not optimally played from both sides. But after the moves Knight C3 and Knight C6, we are actually in a very normal opening in which both sides are applying the golden rules of the opening stage, placing a pawn in the center, developing the minor pieces. And then after D3, D6, now we are going to see what I would like to talk about with you. It's the move Bishop G5. And this is also just a developing move, but it's much more dangerous than it initially seems. Because with this move, White is pinning that knight on F6. And the knight cannot move, because if the knight goes away, the queen will be taken. And in this game and in the next game, I'm going to show you how you can try to make use of that, and also from defender's perspective, how you can deal with such an annoying threat. Well, Sikino played here the move Bishop G4 and putting pressure on this knight as well. And now the key idea here for White is to play Knight D5. Was not played in the game, but the point is that you would like to challenge the knight one more time, and Black doesn't have a convenient way supporting the knight or resolve that pin. So that means on the next move, you can always take on F6 and double the pawns on the F file. But was not played in the game. White played first the move H3, attacking the bishop. Bishop takes F3, queen takes F3, and Black castled. And that's a serious mistake. What should Black have done? Just play here the move Knight D4, attacking the queen and hitting the pawn on C2 at the same time. You don't want to lose material, so in that case White definitely will drop back with the queen to D1 and the game goes on. This was not played in the game. Black instead decided to castle kingside. And now very important is that White has already two attackers on this knight on F6. You can take with your bishop, and then after queen takes F6, very likely queens will come off the board. But much stronger here is to play the move Knight D5. Massive pressure against that knight on F6. Black is in deep trouble already, because there are not enough defenders to support that knight. Black decided to play here the move H6. Instead, you could still have played Knight D4 with an attack on the queen, and the queen can go away. But if that happens, Black still is not in time to deal with this threat, and Black's kingside will just be blown apart. So instead, they follow the move H6. This is very interesting, because if you're really alert here with White, you can just finish off the game almost instantly. But it's very important that you figure out how to take on F6, because Black is defending the knight only twice with the queen and the pawn, but we are attacking it 3 times. So if you take on F6, you're going to win material. The best way of playing here is knight takes F6 with check. If you do take back with the pawn, it's bishop takes F6. You're attacking the queen. You don't want to lose the queen. If queen goes away, now you see that the bishop is a monster on F6. And with the move queen G3, you're giving a check. The king got to go away. And this queen G7 with checkmate. Game over. So here we see how dangerous such a pin potentially can be. In the game, however, white decided to take with the bishop first. And now after g takes f6, white thought, okay, I'm going to win material. I'm taking with the queen. And after queen takes f6, knight takes f6, white is just a pawn up. However, instead, if you don't want to trade queens, you have even possibility to take with a knight. And probably that is just better because look at the queen and knight. They are nicely working together. Black's king is open, and when you're on the attack, you would like to keep your best piece on the board. Okay, other strategy is of course to go for the exchange of queens, which was played in the game. White is a pawn up, but it will take much more effort from white to convert this advantage. King g7. Now the knight goes back, attacking this pawn, but black goes for the counterattack, does the same, hits the pawn on c2. No need to enter all these complications. You just can castle. Very good move to protect the pawn. Black went for the move c6, and now the knight goes back to e3. You see, white is just a pawn up. White has an extra g-pawn. This is looking nice, but it's not that easy. It's not game over yet. However, what should black do now? Not what black did in the game. Black just gave a check on e2. This is a typical beginner's mistake. Like you think, okay, I'm attacking the king. This is looking great. But after the move king d2, there's no follow-up. Your knight is under threat. You don't have anything else to do with your knight. So the knight just went back, and that's, of course, a loss of time. White played here the move c3, attacking the knight. Now the knight has various ways to go to. I mean, knight b5, knight e6 are actually the only two. But if you go knight b5, which is played in the game, there's bishop takes, c takes b5, and now white is still a pawn up, but okay, this double pawn on the b file, this doesn't look very impressive for black. White has to come up with a plan here to get all its pieces involved. And since all the 8 pawns are on the board, it's very important to try to create an open file. This was very nicely played by CDog. He played here the move rook hf1. This is excellent play. Rook fe8 played, and now the knight comes in to d5. So here we see that the rook is also protecting the pawn on f2. Black doesn't have the chance to take this pawn. Black played f6, not realizing what white's idea is, because now they follow the move knight c7 with a huge knight fork. Rook ac8, knight takes e8 check, rook takes. White is an exchange up and technically winning. How to win this? Just to make sure that your pieces, they are better than your opponent. So f4 is the way to go, with the idea that if pawn takes, it's rook takes, the other rook will come over. The rooks are teaming up, it's teamwork, and you can try to take advantage of these weak pawns. In the game, they followed the move d5 instead. Black was looking for counterplay, but that's just a pawn blunder. Pawn can just be taken. Bishop d6 was played, and well, various possibilities here. Taking on e5 is an idea. In the game, they followed c4. Now black may have taken this pawn. I mean, you gotta be careful with your pawns. There's no need to give them away that easily. But neither side was taking advantage of it. a6, c takes b5, a takes b5. And white played here the move f5. I like this move because now the king is boxed in. And next plan is to try to make use of the open file. So now the rook comes over to the c file with the idea to enter. If black really tries to keep the file closed, with the move bishop c5, I think a3 would be an excellent idea. Preparing b4, and then the bishop has to admit that, okay, the rooks are just stronger, they're entering, and eventually that will decide the game. There followed rook e7, and I think CDog's play in this game is excellent. He played here the move rook c6, attacking the bishop. Bishop was protected with the rook. Rook takes b6, pawn is gone. h5, another pawn is taken, and after h4, rook c1, the other rook comes over as well. Black tried here to improve its king, king h6, a4, but now white also has really strong pawns. The rook covers the 4th rank, king takes f5. You could take here the pawn, but king e3 was played, not bad either. King g5, a5. Look at this pawn, it's gonna be unstoppable. Rook a7. Rook c6, hitting the bishop. Bishop c7, attacking the pawn, but white is on top here. Play the move a6, rook protects the pawn. Black goes for f5, but now it's rook b7. And black is in deep trouble because white is offering the exchange of rooks. Black cannot avoid it because otherwise the bishop is hanging. After rook takes, it's pawn takes, bishop is hanging, bishop goes away. And now it's b8, queen, game over. f4, played king e4, bishop d2. And now it's even just mate in one with the move queen takes e5. It's check. The king can't go anywhere. So, okay, interesting game. Mistakes from both sides. But you see how problematic this pin can potentially be. And you better try to learn how to deal with it. So we go to the next game. And it's also a game with Sikino, if I pronounce correctly, with the black pieces. And he's playing against Francis here. And it goes e4, e5 again. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. Castling, knight f6, very good opening. It's the Italian opening. You have seen many times on the channel already. And here again, we see the bishop coming to g5. And what you usually can do as a defender, understanding what the potential problems can be, is play the move h6. I think that is a very clever move. Just questioning what the bishop is gonna do. If the bishop goes back to h4, you can even consider to play the move g5 to unpin, attacking the bishop. And now the bishop will go back to g3, but then it's not looking great at all. The only problem is that having played the move g5 is that black's king is not ideally placed in the center. You also don't want to castle kingside, so we probably have to find an alternative solution for that. Another plan could be to take on f6, but we will get to see something very similar in the game, because black didn't play the move h6, but played here the move b5. I'm not sure this plan is really great, and the reason is that white is able to keep that powerful bishop on the board. Even a move like bishop d5 is a very good move, pinning the other knight, as knight takes d5 is not really recommended because the queen will just be taken in that case. However, white decided to reverse the move order and took first on f6 with the bishop. Now the big question is, because white is attacking the queen, how are you going to recapture? I think taking with the queen is the best move. And I'm not sure what black thought here, but probably black is afraid of the move knight e5, attacking the knight with the knight, the queen, and if the queen moves, also the pawn on c7 is hanging. But the key defensive resource is just to drop back with your queen, and you should not think like, this is a waste of time, I have to go back. No way, white will have to spend the tempo with the bishop still. We can continue our development, we can try to get a bishop out, maybe play knight e7, try to offer the exchange of pieces. Black is absolutely okay. And you're happy as black that this knight on f6 is no longer there, so there's not this annoying pin to deal with. After bishop takes f6 though, there follow g takes f6, and that's not a great move. You don't really want to double your pawns. Bishop d5 played. If the knight goes away, the rook is hanging, so black goes here for the move bishop b7. And now I think that white once again released the tension too early. Like he did 2 moves ago with taking on f6, he decided now to trade off the bishop for the knight. And this is interesting because a lot of people have a preference for a knight over a bishop. Knights are trickier, they can reach all the 64 squares, whereas a bishop can only cover half of the board. It's interesting that people go for this move. On the other hand, I think such a bishop is dominating in the middle. It's exerting pressure, and okay, you can even consider trading off the bishop for the knight later on if you want. What would be a better plan? Well, that's maybe not easy to find, but placing the knight on h4 at the side of the board may look very strange, but the idea is to come in with your knight to this fantastic square f5, and that square can no longer be controlled by any of black's pawns. And imagine the queen comes in as well with devastating mating threat. White can really nicely build up a beautiful attack. However, it was not on the board. Bishop takes c6 played, bishop takes c6, and now queen d2. I think the idea is to come in with the queen to h6 and try to exploit the deficiencies of black's vulnerable king side. Black played here the move h6 to prevent the queen from coming there. And now a typical strategy with the black king still stuck in the center would be to open up the middle of the board with the move d4, so that after taking with a pawn, you can take with your knight and you're attacking the bishop. You will look for ideas to open up more files for your strongest pieces. I think that is what white is supposed to do. However, white played here the move a3, not such a great move. Rook b8, also not sure if that's really helpful, but black is looking probably for ways to generate some play on that side of the board. But big question is, of course, what are you going to do with your king eventually? Knight d5 was played, so the knight looks very active. However, if black would play here the move f5, black is all of a sudden allowed to undouble that pawn, because this pawn is really needed to keep the knight supported. If you take it, it's bishop takes d5 and you lost your knight. So f5 would have been a very interesting move, and it's game on. Rook g8 was played in the game, so apparently black was thinking that he could use the g file for the rooks. King can no longer castle at all, but the biggest problem with this move, and that's what you have to realize when moving your piece away, is that, okay, although you're on the g file, on a half open file, you give up the protection of this pawn. It's queen takes h6, it's just a pawn for free, and the queen joins the attack, because now after the move f5, there follow the move knight f6 check, hitting the king and the rook. King e7, knight takes g8, you're an exchange up. And even here, big question is, how are you going to continue? And you gotta be careful. Just don't take with your pawn on f5. That is a poisoned pawn. There will follow bishop takes f3, and white cannot recapture because the g pawn is pinned. So black is even threatening checkmate. Don't take that pawn. That would be a huge blunder. But a nice little tactic here. It's based on this unprotected bishop on c6. It's the move knight takes e5. Bang! Hitting this bishop. And if you do take the knight, then the 6th rank will be opened up for the queen. And you win another pawn, and well, things are looking really good for white. However, white has this strategy that he is material up and believes that trading off pieces is a good thing to do, and especially queens. So you give a check, forcing the exchange of queens. Queen takes, knight takes. But here, black missed a big opportunity, because he could have played here the move rook g8, hitting the knight with tempo. If the knight goes away, or even if you protect it first and then follows the move f6, the knight is under threat, the knight will have to move anyway, then you're able to take the pawn on e4, d takes e4, bishop takes e4, and look at the massive pressure exerted by black's pieces. White is an exchange up, but because of that pressure, I'm not sure white is really enjoying himself in this position. So, missed opportunity, move bishop d4 was played, hitting the pawn on b2, but now again, typical mistake also by white, because white thinks, okay, my pawn on b2 is under threat, I'm just going to protect it. Not a bad move. However, much better is to try to solve the problem with tempo. By playing the move c3, your pawn on b2 can no longer be taken, and you do hit the bishop on d4, and it's just looking great. And basically black's last move is just a waste of time. Rook b1 on the board, king f6, attacking the knight on g5, and now once again, you can play h4 to protect the knight, or you can go back with your knight. Both are sensible options, but look what happened. Knight h7 check. A typical mistake we had already seen in the previous game, that this is a single check, you're attacking the king, but look, after the move king g6, where is your knight going? The knight is trapped at the side of the board. Once you place your knight at the side of the board, you have to think about what is going to be the follow-up, and now it's too late. The knight is trapped. White still plays the move c3, hitting the bishop. Bishop goes away to c5. Maybe also b6 or a7 would have been good. You can always place your bishops far away. After e takes f5, pawn is captured, but black can just take the knight on h7. Instead, he decides to take the pawn on f5. I thought that's a weird decision. It's maybe still playable. Rook b to c1, mysterious move. Rook g8, huge threat of taking on g2 as rook and bishop are hitting the pawn. White noticed the threat, plays g3, king g6, knight is trapped anyway, and look, white plays here a very tricky move. I really think Frank's is here, his idea is brilliant. He comes up with a very clever idea, with the point that pawn is hitting the bishop. If black captures the pawn, c takes d4, you're hitting the bishop again, but now the c file is open. After bishop takes d4, rook takes c6, so that's a beautiful trick which ensures white is winning material. However, black has still a lot of options, can just move the bishop away, and then the knight on h7 is still hanging. So I don't understand why black just didn't play that. Instead, king takes knight was on the board, but now after d takes c5, white is still an exchange up. Of course, some work to be done. b4 on the board, hoping the file is getting opened, and black decided to cooperate, and that's not good. You're helping the rooks. Now, white is an extra rook. Rooks are looking for open files, and now, after rook d8, black didn't realize that this bishop is hanging. So it's rook takes c6, rook d7, and now the game is wide open. White is a rook up, and all the pawns can be taken very soon. Also, the other rook will very soon join the action, but now we have two passed pawns. They can run first. Black is trying to stop them, but this is a very interesting motive you can keep in mind for your future games. You don't even need the support of the other rook. With the move rook b6, we are preparing the advance of this pawn. And now after king f7, it's rook b7 check. The king went away to e8, and now it's a7, and the pawn is too strong. King d8, and now it's rook b8 with check. King gotta go away, and now it's time to get a new queen. Black is forced to give up the rook, and now, okay, black has no more pieces. The remaining pawns can be taken as well. Now, finally, the other rook joins the action, and king is cut off. H-pawn is used as well. And after king c6, it's time to go for a checkmating pattern. The ladder mate, we see it on the board. Very nicely executed by Franks is here. So I thought this was a very interesting game. Like the other one, it was all about this motive with the bishop pinning the knight on f6. And I hope that you got some new ideas how to handle such situations with either color, being on the offensive side or on the defensive side of the board. Thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel, and very soon more exciting content to discuss. See you then.